Right, so recording there, recording there. Hi, Janine. Janine, can you hear me?
Hello, Mike. Yes, I can hear you. How are
Yeah,
you?
okay, great. I'm well on yourself, madam.
Well, thank you.
I
Keeping
must say,
strong.
I must say those glasses of yours. I like the frame. I like the frame.
Funk, man. A little bit of funk.
Yeah, no, we need that, especially at our age. We need that.
Tell me about it. Tell me about
Listen,
it.
it's great having you back. Thank you for making the time. I think perhaps just for, I know that you're busy, so we won't faff too much on all of the other stuff that's not on topic. But perhaps just for the listeners and the viewers, maybe I shouldn't do the intro. Maybe you can just quickly tell us, the lady from the Dragonfly Institute, maybe just
Mm,
a snippet of what it is that you do over and above what we're going to discuss today.
So I have a momentum financial planning practice, and we operate under the Momentum Financial Advice license, FSP license. And so I've been doing financial planning for plus 20 years. And through my love of financial planning, I began to see the gap in the consumer market with financial literacy. And I
Okay.
always took a passion for people development. And so I extended people development into the Dragonfly Institute, which is really a mouthpiece for financial literacy, financial advocacy, and financial empowerment.
All right.
So that's the people development arm of my right side of my body, and the left side is the financial planning side. So that's me. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. That's great. And I think it's important that because funny enough, I started my working career out in insurance. I studied and I was a Sanlam bursar, and obviously I had to go and work my 2 years and then went into the insurance industry. And back then, when we started out, we were referred to as insurance salesmen. I mean, you're from the same
Mhm.
era. We sold
Mhm.
policies. And in fact,
Mhm.
I had the chat with my son just not too, about a week ago about the topic where he's now, venturing into this world. And I said to him, it's best that perhaps you get a person that's qualified on the subject, because it's no longer just about, oh, I need a policy, or I need a funeral policy, I need a life cover, I need this, that, and the other.
Mhm.
It's now called financial planning, where there's a range of products that you are going to need at different stages of your life, but you need somebody at the outset to paint a broader picture and then say, well, this is probably the best place to start at.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, thank you for that intro.
Mhm.
And speaking of financial planning, we are discussing wills today.
Mhm.
It's a subject that a lot of people trying to avoid, because I mean, a will is something that really comes into effect when somebody has passed on, and nobody really wants to talk about death. But I
Mhm.
think it's for that very reason that we need to have a discussion. We need to educate our audiences, so that in the event that death does come along, and it's going to come along and knock on our doors at some point, that we are prepared, and specifically the people that we leave behind, that we don't leave them with a mess. So perhaps maybe let's start off and just define the concept of a will. What is the will? What
Mhm.
is a will? What's the purpose of a will?
Mhm. Mhm. So I just actually want to say two things before I jump into
Cool.
that question. This past month of August, we saw one family, my family, lose two siblings. So two
Okay.
siblings to death, 2 weeks apart, 3 weeks
Wow.
apart.
Sorry about that.
And thank you, Mike. And one of the ladies, my cousin, the older one, she had a will, a testament, she had a financial plan in place, she had estate cover, life cover, burial cover in place. The other not. The reason why, there are some reasons why she didn't have, because she was challenged as a human being. So her mom actually was her ward and guardian. And so, yes, she was an adult, but she was the mind and body, the mind and spirit of a child.
Okay.
And so I said in my tribute, I said, you know, what does her death remind us of? What does her life remind us of? And what does it remind us of the future? And there was one thing that I said, leaving a legacy. And, you know, we often think of legacy as riches,
Yeah.
but we forget that our responsibility whilst we are alive is to actually ensure that we put things in place for the day we die, because we are going to get there. Some of us sooner, like these two cousins of mine. Some of us will be 90 plus. But it's the lasting love letter legacy.
Sure.
It's a legal document that spells out how you want your money and possessions to be managed after you die. And then people say, but I don't have much.
Yeah.
If you die without a will, you die intestate, and it has to go through the state to kind of navigate its way to finalizing. So when you are born, you get a death certificate, and when you die, you get a death. When you're born, you get a birth certificate. When you die, you get a death certificate.
Yeah.
But death doesn't come with a death certificate only. That you owned during your lifetime has to be divvied out, because we come into this world with nothing, but most of the time we die with stuff, with things, with assets.
Yeah.
And then we die with leaving people behind. And so the people behind aren't responsible for cleaning up our mess, aren't responsible for sorting our stuff out. In our lifetime, it is our responsibility to sort our stuff out.
Correct.
And so what is a will? A will is a last will and testament that is a legal document that spells out how you want those possessions and monies to be managed. Things, possessions, the car, the computer, my home, my money, my bank, my policies, if you don't have a beneficiary nomination. And so speaking about this more and more and more becomes the norm. So whilst we mourn and grieve the loved one, the norm is that there are things that follow, the admin that follows. It's a lot.
Correct.
And so then we sat with his family member's husband and 2 children, and we read out the will, and we took out all the policies and went onto the computer, who had a beneficiary, who didn't have a beneficiary, etc. And so what I want to highlight is that it can become messy when there's nothing in place.
Correct.
So I'd rather have something in place. The second part of that is what is a legal valid document? What is a legally executable valid document? And 2 things. For it to be legal and executable, there needs to have been a witness.
Okay.
Even if you're going to write it out, I, Janine Horne, leave my car and my house to my husband, my other house to my sidekick, and my children get the balance of my estate.
Yeah.
Because my husband, my sidekick, and my children were mentioned, they cannot witness the will.
Okay. All right.
Otherwise, it is not legal and executable.
Okay.
The second part of being legal and executable is that there must be a date and a place of signature.
All right. Can I jump in there? Because I mean, we all watch movies, and then you get to the part where they are questioned. So it's got to be documented. We've covered that. It can't be signed by any of the beneficiaries mentioned in the will. What's this deal with? Was the person of sound mind? So maybe in this, just run us through that.
It's a big deal because there's so much fraud. There's so much manipulation. Sure. You know, we see the ugly and the nasty come out at death.
Yeah.
And so the sound mind aspect is very important to ensure that there was no manipulation and that there was complete compos mentis presence of the person that drafted that will. That is me. Okay. I, as the deceased now, was of sound mind the day that I drafted the will. And my witnesses bear testament to that. That's why they are witnesses.
Okay.
To avoid fraud, to avoid drama, to avoid questions. And so I've also seen in my lifetime and in my profession that wills can be contested.
Okay.
In fact, we've got a situation where a will of the ex-spouse of 20 years ago is being contested.
All right.
So we're having to go and look through the piles and piles of files in the master's office for a third thing. That will, its original form,
yeah,
you can have the option of keeping it with yourself or in safe custody. So if you have that will drafted by a professional company, we have Momentum Trust on our side. I advocate for having it kept in safe custody.
All right.
That goes into the vaults, just like in the movies, that vaults and that drawer and that very kind of thriller vibe, you know. That is a safe custody in the drawer with the key, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Horne's will. And so you can have a will in safe custody or not. If you choose to keep your will with you, tell somebody.
Yeah.
Tell somebody, my paperwork is in that file, in that drawer.
Yeah.
And then in that drawer and that file, put the policies, the policy numbers, everything there. Because your will is your mouthpiece when you aren't there.
Correct.
It's not the family's responsibility to go and hunt.
Yeah.
We cannot be like ostriches with our heads in the sand and assume we're not going to die. Really?
Yeah. I get you.
So we know we're going to die and we know that we're going to have to sort out our stuff. So let's be the responsible adults and sort that out. And so that cassie, that drawer, put it all together, write a note. I got a call once to say, your name was on the note to say, when I die, contact this woman.
Yeah.
And everything was ready for me in that drawer with your name at the top of the pile. So, and then live a happy long life, you know?
Yeah.
So safe custody. And if you're going to keep the original with you, have a copy with somebody, tell your neighbor, if you don't want your children to know, tell your mother and your neighbor, etc. So just somebody needs to be able to talk on your behalf when you can't talk. So safe custody or not safe custody, or original, and then the original, if it's with you, needs to be found.
Okay.
So that's why I prefer safe custody, because the master calls for the original signed will.
Yeah. All right.
You see, and that's the danger now. So that original will can go missing. Sometimes people have read the will, found it, and then it's gone missing because somebody told somebody it's in that cassie, in that room, in that.
Yeah.
So I prefer it being kept in safe custody. Most companies have that option. Your banks have that option. And sometimes there's a safe custody fee.
Okay.
And then there's an executor that gets nominated. Can I go along?
Just before, because I just want to latch on to the safe custody, but I want to go back, as you mentioned about, you know, somebody needs to know. I have very vivid memories of my father died. I was in Cape Town. I had to go back to the Eastern Cape. And obviously, as the eldest son from my mom's side, you know, the responsibility kind of then landed on me to help her sort things out. And she knew exactly where that tussie was. It was on the cupboard, and, you know, out came the tussie and everything was in there. So I like the idea that you say, well, over and above the person whose will and testament it is and all of the other legal documents, somebody else also needs to know, whether that be a spouse, if it's a single person, make sure that you get a trusted person. But I want to tie this aspect to, so your advice, would you advocate for, can I, Michael Fourie, with soundness of mind in my own little corner, just write up my own little thing and then say, whoops, I'm going to file it there somewhere? Or let me get a professional, and that professional would be you. It could be my bank. It could be any of these other financial services institutions that offer assistance, what did you say to our audience? Do it yourself, or perhaps it's best that you get a professional, because there might be other things that you are not aware of, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in the discussion, that it would be to your benefit that you get a professional to perhaps assist you.
So I want to just go back to your little cussy thing and then remind me if I forget the flow of your question. But most companies also have what they call a life file.
Okay.
Old Mutual's got it, Momentum's got it, speak to your advisor, speak to your bank. There's a life file that's like a PDF document, maybe 30 pages long, that spells out everything.
All right.
If you don't have copies of all the policy documents, these days things are kept electronically. I'm a professional, but I have my own professional advisor. That is a colleague and a friend, and he's got everything, and my kids and my husband were copied on everything.
Yeah.
And I updated my records. I want to speak about beneficiaries, so make a note of that for me.
Okay,
so your
sure.
question was, do you recommend that we do it ourselves or do we take a professional? So here's the technical thing. There's a 250,000 Rand kind of cap or limit where most and there's a technical term which, as I started saying, it slipped my mind.
Okay.
But most of the professional companies only want wills over 250,000 because there's a clause in the act that speaks of estates valued lower than 50,000 or 250,000 or above. Okay. Because you've got fees and costs associated with dying. So, and that's the second part I want you to make a note of, fees and costs associated with dying. Please, we need to come back to that. So
Sure.
Just in terms of the complication of the will, my call just before this call was, I don't have much. I've got X amount of money in my bank account. I'm renting a flat. But I said the girls must come in and they must say, look at what's around, and then they must come and have everybody take stuff after they take stuff. Now, if you're going to put that in your will, the executor is going to say, well, I need an independent to come and value everything. So the day that you die, two things happen. One, we sort your body out and your corpse out and your loved ones and death certificate, etc. Then if there's a will, what's your letter of wishes about how you should be buried?
Yeah.
The second thing is there's an inventory that happens. So the executor says, I'm coming to count everything that you've got. So what's the inventory of assets, liabilities, and stuff? Goederes, possessions.
Yeah.
And so now all those stuff, goederes, possessions, has a value to it, including money in the 2 bank accounts and this money that I hid there for in case of a rainy day. All of that gets
under the
added
mattress.
up. Yeah. All of that gets added up, and that now becomes the value of the estate.
Yeah.
And policies with beneficiaries aren't included in the estate. Retirement benefits aren't included in the estate.
Okay.
So your value of your estate, and this is very technical and it calls for another session perhaps, but your value of estate is an estate calculation. We look at assets, liabilities, and we look at costs associated with that. So your cost of dying is value of estate, master's fees, executor's fees, debt must be settled, as in your creditors must be settled. Then what does the will say? What policies goes to who? He now has to execute on all of that as Mr. Executor, and Mr. Executor gets 3.99%.
Okay.
So back to your question, do I do it myself? I'd say do it yourself with 2 independent witnesses if it was simple. If it was you as an older person and, the house is taken care of, or you married community of property, and if I die, my husband gets, and if he die, I get, but if we both die together, the children get in equal sums and 2 independent witnesses. Okay, cool, that's straightforward. That's everything.
Yeah.
But if there were minor children that needs guardians appointed, because you and I as husband and wife, we could be traveling together in the car and we both could be wiped out. I mean, I don't know if you saw now the accident with the taxi. It was mother, child, and one son, and the 11-year-old son is surviving.
Yeah, I got a
That
glimpse of that,
tragedy is
Janine.
exactly what we speak of, why you have to nominate somebody as a guardian for your child,
Yeah,
especially Mike, the baby daddies, the missing baby daddies. And so the missing baby daddies now suddenly wants to be daddies when actually you, Mike, were looking after my child. And I
yeah,
want you to be the guardian of my child that I had out of wedlock. That's now your stepson that's a part of the family.
sure.
So those nuances and variations and complications need special attention. So
Okay,
I always say the value of the estate is more than 250,000. There's complications and layers, and maybe it's not complications, but there's layers and nuances to it. And you want an outside person to execute independently, have it done professionally.
okay, all right. I think before we move on, let me say, even though to our listeners and viewers, even though you are a professional, um, the recommendation personally from my side would still be go and have a sit down with your own financial advisor.
Always,
Do
always.
not take anything that Janine is saying or that I'm saying as the gospel. We're here to educate and help, but still the responsibility is upon you to go and just have a chat with a professional yourself. And Janine, perhaps in the comments later on, you can maybe just drop your contact deeds so that people are aware how to get hold of you. Maybe I'll just spell it out for them now. So if you go onto Facebook, you can get hold of a Facebook page called the Dragonfly Institute. Is it
Correct,
the same handle on Instagram? Yeah,
correct, correct. And
The Dragonfly Institute, all one word. And you can see what Janine is up to on the social media pages. The word executor has come up on a number of occasions. So, can you tell us who this person is? Is it somebody that I appoint? Is it somebody that someone appoints on my behalf? And what is this person supposed to do once I'm not
mm,
there?
mm. So the word executor, the short word is execute, somebody that execute your
Okay.
wishes in your legal document. The executor is governed. So there's controls around the executor, his roles, his responsibilities, his fees.
Yeah.
He gets a standard 3.99% ex VAT on the value of the estate that he executes. And he has to appoint agents, attorneys, valuators to verify the information and the values of the assets in the estate. That executor is appointed at wills level, so at drafting
Okay.
stage. And if you're doing it with a professional company, then most likely they would be your executors because that's their service.
All right.
You can appoint an outsider. Normally, they would then charge you a drafting fee. So with free wills, we coming up, which all of us participate in as professionals in the industry and as service providers, we normally do the free will if you appoint us as the executor. In this case, Momentum Trust, my
Okay. All right.
professional service provider. So executor is the person appointed in your will at drafting stage to execute your wishes. So it's that final love letter wishes.
Right.
And it includes how you want to be buried, who gets what, nominating a guardian, should there be a trust the time that you die, because both the kids are young kids, and now we need a legal body to manage the money in order to have the human person that's the guardian execute
Yeah.
and no fraud and the management, etc. Also, people, these days our kids are smart, but they also kind of, I don't know, live different lives. And so maybe in our era, we were wiser, we were more mature, we lived, we kind of matured faster. So we had a
Yeah.
different lifestyle to our kids now being 20 or 19 or 18 or 17 or even 25. And so the recommendation is always, if you have a minor, that there must be a guardian. Otherwise, it again has to go through the state. Monies have to go through the state if there's no will.
Okay.
State-run guardians fund Then you have to apply to the Guardians Fund in order to get some money because you died intestate. So really, if you have assets and dependents, please have a will done.
All right.
Secondly, if you have values of estate that's quite straightforward, less than 250,000, you can do it yourself, but you have two independent witnesses. Thirdly, if there's layers and nuances, and the recommendation is always to rather seek the help of a professional. So again, the call that I had earlier on, her estate value is not much. So we're going to try and assist her with a simple, straightforward will.
Okay.
Just
All right.
because there are stuff and there is money and we want to be able to execute her wishes. The fourth thing about that is those costs and fees that are your responsibility at death.
Yeah.
So I then need to bury you. From burying you, I then need to call up your will. Then there's an executor that's associated with the will. Then there's all your assets, liabilities that gets added and lumped into an estate account. And we call this the L&D account, and it's, you know, what that whole list of inventory and the distribution of your estate.
Yeah.
And so at every level, if there's a house, if there's properties, if there are businesses, if there are vehicles, all of them need valuations. And so we have to appoint agents to go and valuate, and then those valuators also need their money. So your responsibility as death is to ensure that there's enough money for your dependents or your debt to bury you. And let's just talk about burial and policy sales as my next point. To then cover this cost of their estate. And then after all of that, the pocket change is then divided per your will.
All right.
So if there are policies that you want to ensure gets to your beneficiaries faster, nominate a beneficiary, because a beneficiary nomination sits outside of the estate.
Okay.
So it's super the will.
All right.
We also find in death so few families, so many cases where the spouse was oblivious to what's going on financially, especially where the husband was the breadwinner and multiple businesses and then actually, you know, he's died in debt, or he's died with so many expenses, or he's died without, you know, having enough funds to look after us. So when you speak to your professional advisor, you know, I also encourage speaking to your people. I encourage sitting down as a couple. I encourage sitting down and saying, look, I've got a will in place, but you don't. And I'm at risk because I now am at risk, you know, the day that you pass on without a will. And then the policies nominate the beneficiaries directly. And then other policies can go towards the will to cover the debt and the expenses in the estate. Okay. Remember, your creditors now becomes a debt in their estate that must be settled. I, as your dependent, is also must also be taken care of by the executor. So not money for burying me, money for my dependents, money for my debt, and the money for my estate. Okay. Are all things that I, as the deceased person, whilst alive, obviously need to take care of. So yes, a will with a nomination, with two valid witnesses, date and place. And then if there are nuances and complications, I always say do it anyway with a professional. You may pay a once-off drafting fee and then keep it in safe custody, because now it's a simple, but at least it's valid and legal. And then your duties are your duties whilst alive, what must be taken care of financially with regards to death. Beneficiaries on policies, nominate them so that there's direct money is immediately available. If you have funeral policies, you know, many people have lots of funeral policies at lots of different places. But now there's only that one little bookie in the cupboard, or, you know, there's only the one policy document in the cupboard. So again, back to the life file, back to copying somebody on an email to say, these are the 5 policies, you know, I met with my financial advisor. Then the last point I want to raise, and you're welcome to interject at any point, of course, is marital regimes.
Yeah, before we in fact that was going to be my next thing, but I think it's important for me perhaps just to emphasize to our viewers and our listeners, having lost a mom and a dad, and for those that have lost family members, the event itself is traumatic, and there's a lot that you need to deal with, especially if it's your parents. I think the last thing anybody wants is to then end up, and pardon for me using the word, but I think to get the point across, I'm going to use the word. The last thing anybody wants is to then sit with a mess because things are not in place. So I think the encouragement
It's a valid
really,
word.
yeah, the encouragement really is make sure that you have stuff in place so that you don't add additional trauma and heartache upon the people that in some respect were dependent upon you, and now suddenly they find themselves in uncharted water, so to speak.
Mm.
But then let's go into the next question about marriageal regimes, because there's people married in community of property. Then there's people married with anti-nuptial agreements, one with accrual, the other one without accrual. Perhaps you can just briefly talk us through how things differ for those. Can I call them three groups?
Mm, mm. So anti-nuptial, let's start there. It's you and I now saying we're going to do this thing, and we then say whatever I bring into the marriage, whatever I had before the marriage remains mine.
Yeah.
So what is mine is mine. What is yours. Then with or without accrual is what we accumulate together
Together. Yeah.
is either ours, or what I accumulate in it is still mine, and what you accumulate in it is still yours. So that's the
Okay.
with or without the accrual bit. Community of property is what is yours is mine, and what is mine is yours.
Yeah.
So I'm responsible for your debt. You're responsible for my debt. And so at death, it's as if both parties have died, because both estates are basically called up. And there's also then been a lot of surprises come. And I see some creditors now have a little tick box, though,
Okay.
that says, confirm that your spouse is aware. Easy
All
for
right.
me to tick it, knowing that you're not aware. I think they actually should have you sign it.
Sure.
But confirm that your spouse is aware that you're making this debt if married community of property. And so there's that danger when couples don't plan together, and when there's dishonesty. It's a loaded word, but it's the word that precisely describes it. When there's dishonesty around money and your money behavior and your money habits and what truly goes on. And so even, and we've seen it across racial groups, across age categories, where there's a lot of surprises at death.
Sure.
And so to avoid surprises, it's about having the conversations. I think this is the great work that you do, Mike. Having the conversations and getting to listen to such conversations and such talks, to make it more real, because death is real. And yes, you're right, it's the trauma of it and it's the grief of it. But then there's the aftermath, and the aftermath is the stuff that lingers. And so the legacy bit is the one I want to touch on. It's that lasting legacy. I sound like a clientele advert, but I love the word. I love the concept of it. I love the concept of it.
Correct.
Desmond Dube and his mom. His mom is now passed away, if I remember.
But listen,
I love the
sorry, no, we got to get off track, because I heard a story that was actually not his mom.
Oh,
There
okay.
there was a story that did the rounds, and it's across the whole of South Africa believed that it's mother and daughter, and then somewhere out of the blue it pops up, but it's actually not his mom. But anyway, yeah, we won't get
We're
into
gonna
their
get
relationship.
sidetracked. Yeah. So so for me, that excuse me, that legacy is exactly that. It's how you died, maybe peaceful, calm, dramatic, early, not early, on time, whatever.
Yeah.
That's one little aspect. But the other stuff, my mom worked hard and she left a policy for me. My mom informed me. We spoke about death.
Yeah.
We spoke about that there is a will. And we spoke about, that I and my brother share the stuff. And I mean, I've said to my kids as well, said, we've now moved to the farm, we're building businesses. The Dragonfly Institute is an asset.
Yeah.
My husband's business is an asset. I'm not employed, I'm working for myself. My financial planning book is an asset.
Yeah.
So all of that is actually yours and Chelsea's the day that Dad and I are gone.
Yeah.
And so how we also relate to each other in life, how we converse in life is also a legacy, Mike.
Correct.
Being able to have these conversations with our kids and our families and preparing them. And yes, it may be, God willing, that we're 90 years old, then we kick up daisies. But how are we preparing for them? We're preparing them. And my other recommendation, and the powers that be and the treasury, because they all want their piece of the pie, capital gains tax, and all of those taxes are applicable at death. That's number 5. Cost and fee number 5 is you pay tax whilst you're alive, and you pay tax your death.
Yeah.
You still have your last income tax submission, capital gains tax of distributions, and asset disposal, because remember, disposal is either selling or at death.
Yeah.
And all of that taxes are also due to the taxman. So, if you want to give away your hats and your scarves and your lovely shoes to reduce this value of the estate and the complication in your life, do that.
Yeah.
So there's also this distribution of wealth and assets and legacy in your lifetime that
Correct.
I often also recommend and talk about.
And I think on that point, again, just to emphasize, because of the costs associated, because I might not be aware of all of the intricacies and how these things are intertwined, perhaps more reason, get a professional so that you can make the relevant calculations and then prepare accordingly so that, nobody gets any nasty surprises. I want to quickly, I want, like a naughty child, I want to sneak this in. I want to just stick on the marriages. So people are married in community of property, right? So naturally, if I die, then stuff goes to my wife. But I want to throw in the scenario, can I say, well, okay, yeah, 50% of it goes towards you, 20% goes towards Jason, who's my son, the other 20% goes towards Abigail, that's my daughter, and then 10% goes to the dog.
So you can do exactly that, although the community of property is an automatic formula.
Okay.
So you can only give your half of the half away. The other half automatically belongs to her.
Yeah.
So it does come down to 25% for the 2 kids in that example. And yes, you can give it to the dog, and ideally it would be the dog organization. Or it's going to be millions for dog food. And we're going to have puppies and breeds that follow, But yes, you can do it to a charity, to a non-human, to a cause, to an organization. You can speak about the fact that if your family is obliterated, which is also a clause in the will.
Sure.
So single death, first death, simultaneous death, and then a word called family obliteration. Sounds really nasty, and probably is really
true.
It is really, really, really traumatic. On family obliteration, it's, if all of us are gone, myself, Chelsea, Lena, and Eve, what then?
What happens then? Yeah.
So there's a law called per stripes that speaks of your descendants. So it's down the bloodline. Mom and dad up, siblings down, cousins, nephews, aunties, uncles. Then everybody's family.
Yeah.
Because now it starts spreading out like that. So there's a Per Stripes Act, and that also takes place in the Interstate Succession Act. So if you die without a will, you die interstate, and the Interstate Succession Act speaks about Per Stripes.
Okay. Janine, I know that in the conversation you touched on it, but I want to, for us perhaps just to put separate emphasis on the fact that both husband and wife then dies simultaneously, and you have two, or even if it's just one teenage kid, and here's where the guardianship comes in. Maybe just talk us through that a little bit, because I want people to understand, what sort of what the implications are if things are not in place.
So we recommend appointing guardians for minors, and in this country, the minor age stops at 18.
Okay.
And I mean, at 18, I feel like they should actually still be minors. But that's, yeah. So it is 18. At 18, you become a major, and you basically can then look after yourself. So the act legislates that a minor must have a guardian, and therefore you appoint a legal guardian, and it often becomes a point of contention. When I sit with couples and we talk about this guardianship, and I normally try and prepare your head, and I say, okay, Mike, so you, and what's your wife's name, Mike?
Gail.
You and Gail are now going to meet with me tonight about the world, or next week, Tuesday. I needed to think about these 4 important things.
All right.
Because both your kids are minors, we must appoint a guardian. It's not even a recommendation. On wife or simultaneous death.
Yeah.
Or if, for example, like I said, there's another father or a different father or a different mother, not another, a different, then it could be that, if I, as his mother passed, he would prefer going to live with his father, you not being his father. So those are the talks, the nuances that we need to be specific about. So back to your question, if a child is under the age of 18, we recommend appointing a guardian. A guardian is then this legal guardian that then takes care of the child. That guardian must be named, otherwise the executor will say, who's going to take this child?
Yeah.
And so now nobody puts up their hand because it's another mouth to feed. The child lives outside of where you live in Table View, but the child goes to school in the southern suburbs. So it's a whole lot of complications. So I also recommend speaking to the guardian.
Yeah.
And Gail, so if me and Gail go simultaneously, we would like you to take the kids. However, we've left life cover for them.
Yeah.
And it does mean that he would have to move schools, and it does mean he would have to live with you. So there's enough life cover to maybe build on a room, et cetera, et cetera. So that layering is a complicated thing, because you have to talk on behalf of you not being here looking after your children.
Correct.
So talking to the guardian and then saying there's enough money. Now, what is enough money? That's your professional will tell you.
Yeah.
Because my kids may be living on peanut butter and bread and 1 apple a day, and your kids may be taking Woolies lunches and Model C school and what, and be taken by car, and my kids may be jumping in the taxi. So my maintenance cost per child is maybe 2,000 a month, and your maintenance or cost per child is maybe 5,000 a month. And that's the bit about, and my kids tease me when I say that, that's the bit about making sure that there's enough life cover. That's the bit about sitting with the financial planner and saying, can we do an estate liquidity plan? Can we ensure that there's enough money? And then also an inheritance. We also come from this systemic and systematic oppression, and we come from poverty mindset as Black and brown faces in South Africa. And I think the very real conversation is, what is our wealthy mindsets? And so we have so many people without a valid will as Black and brown people.
Correct.
Because it's a mindset thing.
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing. And then we have even fewer people that are leaving some form of legacy, because he can sort himself out, and Gail's probably going to take another man, so actually she can sort herself out. I hear it.
Yeah, true.
But if we were alive for another 10 years, Gail will be happily married with me. So say to Gail, I'm going to sort the bond out, and I'm going to give you 2 years of income on my life cover. And then that is it, because I really want to save and create wealth whilst I'm alive.
Correct.
And then I, as Gail, may go, geez, Mike, that's a bit horrible. you know, I'm earning half of you, and then we have to sell the house because I'm going to miss 20,000 Rand because you pay the DSTV, you pay the cell phone accounts, you pay the electricity and the utilities, you pay the, and that's what I'm going to miss the day that Mike dies.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
the conversation of a will is not in isolation of what's available.
Yeah. Correct. I get you.
And that's the same for the child, Mike. Sorry, just to circle back. That's the same for the child, the same for the guardians, the same for appointing a guardian, the minor child. That child would have gone to university, would have lived comfortably, would have been educated by you if your responsibility was the education. The child is going to study these days till 25, 26, and then only get a job. So
Yeah.
you would have looked after that child till age 25, 26 anyway, in this lifetime, because we ain't throwing our children out the nest like our parents did us.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, very practical examples on my side is my mother, so my children's grandmother, specified in her will that for each of her grandkids, she left a portion of money upon her death, and that money went to, it's kept by the masters, right? Because they're still minors. And she specifically said, well, this was for educational purposes. So this is where this legacy thing that you're referring to comes in. And how nice is it that, Abigail now needs to go to tertiary education, or Jason, that their grandmother. So now I'm not the only one shouldering this burden of having to pay for the university fees. Yes, there are savings mechanisms available for you to make provision for varsity, but here is money's made available through somebody that thought of her grandkids many years ago, and that money has nicely accrued with interest over the years, and there's a payout that now comes, as an additional aid towards varsity fees. I think that's the type of legacy that you mentioned.
Absolutely. And my mom did the reverse. She gave each of her grandchildren 100,000 while she was alive.
Okay.
So my two kids got theirs, and I put them through university. And at some point, I had 2 accidents, and I paid both my kids' school fees from it. So it was purely for education.
All right.
And similarly with my brother's little one, and similarly with my sister's 2 littlies. So
Yeah.
we could also leave a lot of our legacy whilst we're alive.
Correct.
Is that aspect that can also be happening, and it's beautiful, it's powerful to see, and already they're changing the trajectories, because I know my mother's mother didn't do that for her. I know my father's parents didn't have to do that. Didn't have, so they're already changing the trajectories, and it's up to us to follow that.
Correct. I get you. Yeah, no, I think in the age that we are living, we have the opportunity, especially for our kids, to do better and instill these things, because both of us come from a generation where money was a taboo topic together. There was a couple of taboo topics, and we just sort of found our way, stumbled, made a whole lot of mistakes. At least we have the opportunity now, and one of the reasons why we're having sessions like these is to put credible information out so that people can end up making informed decisions. We are on the hour mark. I've covered everything that I have on my list. I don't know whether you have any closing thoughts. Yes, go for it, please.
So National Free Wills Week is the week of the 11th of September. And most service providers offer free will in that drafting time. The Legal Society of South Africa created that campaign. So it's just gone viral. It's just spread. Use it to your advantage. Even if you draw a simplified will and you say, at least I've got something, and then I want to make an appointment with Janine or my person. If I have a good person, please, we must all have a person.
Yes.
That is my plea. We should all have a person, and we should all have a will. And if we have those two things, and even if I don't have a person, because I don't want a person's professional advice and I can do it all, at least I have a will.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you, Mike. for having me.
And then lastly, you can find Janine again on Facebook and on Instagram, the Dragonfly Institute. If you want any additional details, you will know where to get hold of me, and I will gladly pass on any relevant information that I have to Janine. But again, yeah, please get a person that's going to give you professional advice. Don't be like the two of us that, you know, we grew up on what our buddy said, that stuff that he heard on the street corner, and then we followed that as gospel. There are professionals, and make sure that you actually speak to a professional, because you guys have a little, is there a number, an accreditation number that you have as a personal advisor? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an FSP number. All of us must be registered with the FSCA. So yes, accredited, registered financial professional is very important.
Yeah.
And don't buy policies, buy financial advice. That's my
Correct.
lasting statement. Don't buy
Yeah.
policies, buy financial advice.
Yeah. Call centers create good opportunities, but I think, yeah, let's not, yeah, get professional advice. Get professional advice. That is what we are going to leave you with. Janine, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for having you. Look forward to another session. Maybe there's another interesting topic that we can pick up on. All the best with your business journey. Say hi to the family. And yeah, it was just great chatting to you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.